in the heart of the celestial dominion, where the twin suns of Velara cast shimmering halos over spires of living crystal and floating gardens drifted on currents of ionized air, stood the grand palace of Azcales, a marvel of ancient alien architecture fused with hyper-advanced technology. Its halls echoed with the soft chime of gravity chandeliers and the murmur of diplomats from 100 star systems. Among the sea of diplomats, warriors, and interstellar dignitaries attending the Centennial Concord Summit was a lone human named Corin Vale. He wasn't royalty, nor a general, nor even a scientist of renown, just a cultural liaison from Earth's newly recognized delegation, tasked with smoothing over interspecies misunderstandings with charm, wit, and an encyclopedic knowledge of alien etiquette. Corin had expected stiff formalities, awkward handshakes or tentacle grasps, and maybe a few too many ceremonial toasts. What he hadn't expected was to be cornered in the Moonpetal courtyard by the twin princesses of House Velara, Lyra and Mira, and have his life turned upside down with 3 simple, joking words. He'd been admiring a fountain that bloomed with liquid starlight when the sisters appeared like twin mirages, their blue skin glowing faintly under the amber twilight, their long white hair cascading like frozen rivers down their backs. They moved in perfect synchrony, as if sharing a single mind, their almond-shaped eyes, gold-flecked and luminous, fixed on him with unnerving intensity. Corin, ever the diplomat, offered a polite bow and a warm smile. "Your Highnesses," he said, voice steady despite the sudden flutter in his chest. "An honor." Lyra tilted her head, studying him like a rare artifact. "You are the human," she said, not unkindly, but with the tone of someone confirming a rumor. Mira stepped closer, her fingers brushing the edge of his sleeve. "He smells of rain and iron," she murmured. "Odd, pleasant." Flustered but amused, Corin chuckled. "Well, I just had lunch. Probably the iron is from the cutlery." Then, with a playful shrug and a grin meant to ease the tension, he added, "But don't worry, I'm single." The moment the words left his lips, the air changed. The ambient hum of the palace seemed to still. The twin princesses froze, not in shock, but in something far more dangerous. Resolve. Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of something ancient and possessive flashing within them. Mira's lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. "Single," Lyra repeated, as if tasting the word. "Unbound. Unclaimed." Mira nodded. "Then you are ours." Corin laughed again, thinking it a jest. "Oh, I'm flattered, truly. But I think your father might have something to say about that." It was then that the sisters stepped forward in unison, their movements fluid and deliberate, flanking him like celestial sentinels. "Our father," Lyra said coolly, "has no say in matters of the heart bond." Mira placed a cool, slender hand on his chest. "And you, Corin Vale of Earth, have just spoken the ancient words of availability before witnesses of royal blood. By the laws of the Dominion, you are now eligible for claiming." Corin's laughter died in his throat. "Wait, what? That's not—" "I was joking." But the sisters were already leading him away, their grip gentle but unyielding, their expressions serene yet utterly serious. The palace corridors blurred past him as they guided him through crystalline archways and levitating staircases, deeper into the inner sanctum of the royal wing. Corin's mind raced. He'd read the Dominion's legal codices, vaguely, but nothing about jokingly saying you're single triggering a royal courtship clause. Yet as they passed guards who bowed deeply without question, and attendants who averted their eyes with knowing smiles, he realized this was no misunderstanding. In Velari tradition, declaring oneself unattached in the presence of eligible royalty, especially during a Concord summit, was considered a formal invitation to courtship. And with twin princesses, the implications were complicated. The sisters brought him to the Chamber of Twin Moons, a circular room bathed in soft silver light, its walls embedded with bioluminescent flora that pulsed in time with the planet's twin moons. Here, they finally released him, standing side by side like mirrored statues. "You will stay with us until the rite of choosing is complete," Lyra announced. 7 days, Mira added. "At the end, you will select one of us as your bondmate, or face exile from the Dominion forever." Corin gaped. "I don't even know you, and I didn't agree to any of this." Lyra arched a delicate eyebrow. "You spoke the words. The law is clear." Mira's voice softened, almost tender. "Besides, we've been watching you. You defended the Zenthari envoy when others mocked their gilflares. You learned the greeting song of the Karate in 3 days. You care, Corin. That is rare." He felt a pang, part flattery, part panic. These women were stunning, intelligent, powerful, and utterly alien in their customs. How could he possibly choose between them? And did he even want to? Over the next few days, the sisters took turns escorting him through the wonders of the palace and beyond. Lyra, the elder by 7 heartbeats, was fierce and strategic. She took him to the sky arena, where warriors dueled with plasma blades atop floating platforms, and challenged him to spar with training wands. To his surprise, she let him win once, then pinned him effortlessly the next, her breath warm against his ear as she whispered, "Don't mistake kindness for weakness." Mira, by contrast, was dreamy and intuitive. She led him through the memory gardens, where flowers bloomed with the emotions of those who walked among them. His turned soft blue with wonder, then flushed crimson when she brushed her fingers against his. She sang to him in the old tongue, her voice weaving constellations into the air, and told him stories of stars that fell in love with mortals and burned themselves out for a single kiss. Corin found himself laughing more than he had in years. Lyra's dry wit cutting through diplomatic pretense, Mira's whimsical observations turning mundane moments into magic. Yet beneath the humor and beauty lay tension. He noticed the way their eyes met when he praised the other's skill, the subtle stiffening of posture, the unspoken rivalry that hummed between them like a low-frequency chord. They were sisters, yes, but also heirs to a throne that demanded unity, and a bondmate who would stand beside one of them as consort. The stakes were higher than romance. They were political, spiritual, eternal. The heart bond, they explained one evening as they shared a meal of glowing fruit and spiced nectar, was not merely marriage. It was a neural and emotional fusion, a lifelong resonance that linked 2 souls across space and time. To break it was to risk madness. To enter it lightly was unthinkable. Corin tried to reason with them. This isn't fair, to me or to each other. You're forcing a choice based on a joke. Lyra set down her goblet, her expression unreadable. Nothing in the universe is accidental, Corin. You came here. You spoke those words. Perhaps the stars aligned. Mira reached across the table, her hand covering his. Or perhaps, you were meant to find us. He wanted to pull away, but her touch sent a strange warmth through him, like sunlight after a long winter. He was falling slowly, helplessly, into their orbit, and that terrified him more than exile. On the 5th day, disaster struck. A faction of anti-human traditionalists, led by the stern Lord Vexus of the Iron Choir, declared Corin's presence an affront to Valari purity. During the grand procession of unity, as Corin walked between the sisters beneath a canopy of woven light, assassins struck. Not with blades, but with sonic disruptors designed to shatter neural pathways. The blast hit Mira first. She cried out, collapsing mid-step, her white hair darkening at the roots as her biorhythm faltered. Lyra roared, a sound like thunder cracking through crystal, and drew twin energy daggers from her bracers. Corin didn't think. He threw himself over Mira, shielding her with his body as shards of shattered light rail rained down. Pain seared his shoulder, but he held firm, shouting for medics even as Lyra dispatched the attackers with terrifying grace, her movements a blur of blue fury. In the healing chambers, beneath domes of regenerative mist, Mira lay unconscious, her skin dimmed to a pale gray. The royal healers whispered of neural scarring, of possible memory loss. Lyra stood at the foot of the bed, her face a mask of grief and rage. They targeted her because she is gentler, she said, voice raw. Because they think her love for you makes her weak. Corin sat beside Mira, holding her hand, his own trembling. She's not weak. She's the bravest person I've ever met. Lyra looked at him then, not as a rival, not as a prize, but as someone who understood. If she doesn't wake, the right is void. You go free. But Corin shook his head. I'm not leaving her. Something shifted in Lyra's eyes. Respect. Maybe even kinship. That night, as the twin moons reached their zenith, Corin stayed by Mira's side, whispering earth lullabies his grandmother had sung. He told her about oceans and mountains, about cities that touched the clouds, about a world where love wasn't bound by ancient laws but chosen freely, messily, beautifully. Hours passed. Then, just as dawn tinged the sky with violet, Mira's fingers twitched. Her eyes fluttered open, gold-flecked, luminous, full of recognition. You stayed, she breathed. He smiled through tears. Where else would I go? The final day of the rite arrived, but the atmosphere had changed. The rivalry between the sisters softened into something deeper. Shared purpose, mutual respect. At the Chamber of Twin Moons, Before the High Council and the watching stars, the sisters stood once more before Corrin. But this time they held hands. "We have spoken," Lyra said. "And we have decided." Mira stepped forward. "The old ways demand a choice, but we are not bound only by tradition." Lyra joined her. "We offer you a new path, one never taken in the history of our house." Corrin's heart pounded. "What path?" The sisters exchanged a look full of love and resolve. "Bond with us both," Mira said softly. "Not as rivals, but as equals. As one heart, three souls." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Lord Vexus rose, furious. "This defies the Codex. The heart bond is for two." But the Empress Mother, seated on her throne of woven starlight, raised a hand. Her voice, though aged, carried the weight of galaxies. "The Codex also says the heart bond must be true. And truth is not always simple." Corrin looked at Lyra, fierce, brilliant, unyielding. He looked at Mira, gentle, wise, radiant. He thought of laughter in the gardens, battles in the arena, whispered secrets under alien stars. He thought of sacrifice, of courage, of a love that refused to be divided. He took a deep breath. "I don't know if Earth has a word for what you're offering," he said, stepping forward to take both their hands. "But if you're willing to rewrite the rules, so am I." The chamber fell silent. Then, slowly, the Empress Mother smiled. "Then let the triune bond be forged." But as the ceremonial rings of quantum thread were brought forth, alarms blared through the palace. Red lights pulsed along the walls. A voice echoed over the comms. "Hostile fleet emerging from the Kuvarn Rift. Identity confirmed. Scourge of Xylos." The Scourge, a merciless armada that devoured worlds, had come to Velara, drawn by rumors of political instability during the Rite. Lord Vexus sneered. "See? This human brings chaos." But Lyra turned, her eyes blazing. "No. He brings something they cannot comprehend." She looked at Corrin. "Will you stand with us?" Mira squeezed his hand. "Not as consort, as warrior, as equal." Corrin straightened, the fear in his gut hardening into resolve. "I didn't come all this way to run." The sisters led him not to a throne, but to the war spire, a needle of obsidian piercing the sky, where the royal starfighters awaited. As they suited up in armor that shimmered with adaptive nanoweave, gold and green for Lyra, silver and sapphire for Mira, and a new set, forged just for him, in deep cobalt and white, Corrin felt something shift inside him. He wasn't just a liaison anymore. He was part of something greater. The cockpit sealed around them as they boarded the twin-seater Valkyrie-class interceptor, its AI humming to life at Mira's touch. "You'll pilot," Lyra said to Corrin, strapping into the gunner's seat behind him. "I'll handle weapons." Mira linked her neural band to the ship's core. "I'll navigate the rift currents." Corrin gripped the controls, his human hands steady on alien tech. "Just tell me where to fly." As the Valkyrie shot into the bruised sky, the Scourge fleet loomed like a swarm of obsidian locusts, their hulls bristling with entropy cannons. The battle was chaos, lasers searing the atmosphere, gravity mines detonating in silent bursts, Velari fighters weaving through debris like silver fish. Corrin flew with instinct he didn't know he had, dodging fire, banking hard, trusting the sisters' voices in his ear. Lyra's shots were precise, disabling engines and shield generators. Mira guided them through blind spots in the Scourge formation, her intuition reading enemy patterns like poetry. But the enemy was vast. One of their wings was sheared off by a lucky shot. Alarms screamed. "We're losing altitude," Corrin yelled. "Hold on," Mira cried. "There's a storm in the ion belt. Ride it." He plunged the ship into the electric maelstrom, lightning crackling over the hull, the G-forces crushing them into their seats. For a moment, all was white noise and terror. Then silence. They burst out behind the enemy flagship, its underbelly exposed. "Now!" Lyra shouted. Corrin fired the plasma torpedoes. The explosion lit the sky like a second sun. Back on the ground, the palace stood intact, the Scourge in retreat. Cheers erupted across the city. But Corrin didn't feel like a hero. He felt exhausted, bruised, alive. The sisters found him on the balcony overlooking the now peaceful gardens. No words were needed. Lyra pressed her forehead to his, a Velari gesture of deepest trust. Mira wrapped her arms around them both. In that moment, the triune bond began. Not with ceremony, but with shared breath, shared scars, shared silence. The Empress Mother later declared the forging of a new tradition, one that honored love in all its forms. Lord Vexus, humbled, bowed his head. And Corin? He still didn't know how this would end, only that he didn't want it to, because for the first time in his life he wasn't just visiting a world. He belonged to it. And as the twin moons rose once more, casting their silver light over 3 intertwined shadows, the stars themselves seemed to lean closer, watching, waiting, whispering a new story into the fabric of the cosmos. One of laughter, loyalty, and a love that dared to defy the stars. The victory over the scourge should have been the beginning of peace. But in the Dominion, peace was never more than a breath between storms. 3 days after the battle, as Corin adjusted to the rhythm of palace life, waking to the scent of moon-petal tea, training with Lyra in the zero-gravity sparring dome, and listening to Mira hum ancient lullabies while tracing constellations on his palm, a coded transmission arrived from the outer rim. It wasn't from the Scourge. It was from someone claiming to be a defector, a former bioengineer from Xylos named Vorin, who insisted he held the key to why the Scourge had targeted Velara so precisely, and so soon after the rite began. Suspicion flared in Lyra's eyes. "A trap," she declared, pacing the war chamber with arms crossed. "They know we're vulnerable after the attack. They want us to lower our shields again." Mira, however, tilted her head, her fingers hovering over the holographic message. His neural signature matches known Xylosian patterns, but there's a resonance in his voice. Grief, not deception. Corin, still learning to read the subtle shifts in their expressions, felt the weight of the moment. If he's telling the truth, and they're coming back stronger, we need every advantage. Against Lyra's protests, the Empress Mother granted permission for a covert extraction. And because Corin's human biology made him undetectable to Xylosian bioscanners, designed only to track alien metabolisms, he was chosen to lead the mission. Disguised in a scavenger's thermal cloak and piloting a battered freighter retrofitted with Velari stealth tech, Corin and a small strike team rendezvoused with Vorin on the derelict mining moon of Kes9. The engineer was gaunt, his gray skin etched with scars, his eyes hollow. He didn't speak until they were light years from the moon, deep in the Veil Nebula. Then, in a voice cracked with regret, he revealed the truth. The Scourge hadn't come for Velara's resources or its throne. They'd come for him. "You?" Vorin said, staring at Corin as if seeing a ghost. "Your genetic signature, it's identical to Project Ether, a failed human augmentation experiment the Scourge abandoned decades ago. They thought all subjects died. But your DNA, it's active, evolving. The heart bond you're forming with the princesses, it's accelerating that evolution. And the Scourge's High Matriarch believes that if she can harvest your neural core during the bond's peak resonance, she can weaponize empathy itself. Turn love into a plague that collapses entire civilizations from within." Corin went cold. He wasn't just a diplomat caught in a royal romance. He was a living weapon they didn't know they'd activated. When he returned to the palace, he told the sisters everything. Mira wept, not out of fear, but sorrow for what he'd been made to carry. Lyra's jaw tightened, her hands curling into fists. "Then we accelerate the bond," she said fiercely. "Complete it before they can strike again." But the Empress intervened. "The triune bond has never been attempted. If the Scourge is watching, they'll sense the energy surge. We must proceed in secret, and we must prepare for war." What followed was a race against time. By day, Corin trained with the Royal Guard, learning to channel his emerging abilities. His touch could now soothe panic in others, his presence calming even the most agitated biodrones. By night, hidden in the sanctum of echoing souls beneath the palace, the 3 of them began the true ritual of the triune bond. It wasn't just emotional, it was biological, quantum, spiritual. Their blood was mingled in a chalice of star-forged silver. Their memories were shared through neural filaments that glowed like liquid light. Corin saw Lyra's childhood fear of failing her people, Mira's secret dream of sailing the methane seas of Titan, and they, in turn, saw his loneliness on Earth, his quiet hope that somewhere out there, he'd matter. But the deeper the bond grew, the more Corin changed. His eyes began to shimmer with faint gold flecks. His skin took on a subtle luminescence under moonlight. And sometimes, in dreams, he heard a voice. Not his own, not the sisters, but something older, vaster. The collective consciousness of the Ether Project, whispering that he was not just a subject, but its fulfillment. Then came the betrayal. It wasn't from outside. It was from within the palace walls. Lord Vexus, still bitter over the new tradition, had been feeding information to a Scourge sleeper agent embedded among the kitchen staff, disguised as a mute servant with synthetic skin. The agent activated a resonance bomb during the final night of the bonding ritual, hidden inside a ceremonial lantern. The explosion didn't kill anyone, but it fractured the sanctum's shielding, sending a pulse of raw bond energy screaming into the upper atmosphere. The Scourge detected it instantly. Within hours, their fleet returned not as raiders but as conquerors. This time, they brought the matriarch herself aboard the Eclipse Maw, a dreadnought that devoured light. She broadcast a message across all channels. Surrender the Etherborn, and your world will be spared. Resist, and we will unmake your stars. Panic spread. Some nobles urged exile. Others demanded Corrin be handed over. But Lyra stood before the High Council, armor gleaming, voice ringing like a war horn. He is not a weapon. He is our heart. Mira stepped beside her, holding Corrin's hand. And if they want him, they'll have to burn the sky to reach him. The battle that followed was unlike any in Dominion history. The Velari fleet, though outnumbered, fought with desperate ingenuity, using gravity lenses to bend enemy fire, deploying sonic blooms that disrupted Scourge hive-mind coordination. Corrin, now fully attuned to the bond, rode in the lead interceptor, his mind linked to both sisters. He could feel Lyra's fury as she targeted enemy command nodes, Mira's sorrow as she rerouted civilian evacuations through collapsing wormholes. And through them he channeled something new. Not just empathy but projection. He sent waves of emotional resonance into the Scourge ships, memories of home, of love, of loss, causing their warriors to hesitate, to question, to feel. For the first time, the Scourge faltered. But the matriarch was relentless. She launched a boarding party directly into the palace's core, breaching the throne room itself. Corrin, Lyra, and Mira met her there, surrounded by fallen guards and shattered crystal. The matriarch was a towering figure, her obsidian carapace pulsing with stolen bioenergy, her eyes voids of cold calculation. "You think love is strength?" she hissed. "It is weakness, a flaw in the design of lesser species." She lunged, claws extended toward Corrin's chest. Lyra intercepted, taking the blow across her ribs. Mira screamed, unleashing a sonic shriek that cracked the matriarch's armor. Corrin, driven by grief and rage, did something no ether subject had ever done. He embraced the matriarch, not to fight but to connect. He flooded her mind with everything. Lyra's courage, Mira's compassion, his own unwavering choice to stay. For a single, shattering moment the matriarch froze. A tear, black as ink, slid down her face. "I had a daughter," she whispered. Then her body collapsed, her neural core overloading from the emotional overload. The Scourge fleet, severed from their hive command, retreated into the void. Victory came at a cost. Lyra lay wounded, her life sustained only by the bond's energy. Mira barely slept, channeling her vitality to keep her sister alive. And Corrin? He could no longer ignore the truth whispering in his blood. The Ether Project hadn't just enhanced him. It had been designed to awaken a latent human trait the Scourge feared above all: the capacity to transform enemies through connection. He wasn't a weapon. He was a bridge. Weeks passed. The palace healed. Lyra recovered, though a silver scar now traced her side, a mark of sacrifice. The Empress declared Corrin not just consort, but co-regent of the Heartbond, the first human to hold such a title. Yet peace remained fragile. Rumors spread of other ether subjects hidden across the galaxy, of rebel factions rising within the Scourge, inspired by the matriarch's last tear. And deep in the archives, Mira discovered an ancient prophecy. When 3 hearts beat as one beneath twin moons, the silent stars will speak, and the lost cradle of humanity will awaken. Corrin stood with his loves on the highest balcony, watching the twin suns set. He no longer felt like an outsider. He was home, but the universe, vast and hungry, had only just begun to test them. Somewhere beyond the rim, a signal pulsed, a human signal older than Earth itself. And it was calling his name. The signal came not as a broadcast, but as a whisper woven into the cosmic background radiation. A pattern so faint only the palace's oldest oracle core, dormant for centuries, could detect it. Mira was the one who heard it first, her fingers tracing the resonance glyphs that bloomed across the chamber walls like living vines. "It's not just a signal," she murmured, eyes wide with awe. "It's a lullaby, and it's singing in Old Terran." Corrin's blood ran cold. Old Terran hadn't been spoken in over 2,000 years, not since Earth's Great Silence. The unexplained global communications blackout that preceded humanity's first warp jump. No archive, no relic, should have preserved it so perfectly. Yet here it was, echoing from a point far beyond the Scourge territories, near the galactic core, a region long believed to be uninhabitable, shrouded in gravitational anomalies and temporal eddies known as the Veil of Echoes. Lyra, now fully recovered but bearing the quiet intensity of someone who had stared death in the eye and refused to blink, studied the star charts that spiraled above them. "If this is a trap, it's the most elaborate one ever conceived," she said. "But if it's real," she turned to Corin, "it could mean humanity didn't originate on Earth." The implications struck like lightning. For generations, humans believed Earth was their cradle. But what if it was only a refuge? What if, long ago, their ancestors fled something or someone from the core? And what if that something was waking up? Against the counsel of the High Council, who feared another Scourge ambush, the Triune Bond made their decision together. They would go, not as diplomats or warriors, but as seekers. The Empress, her face lined with both pride and sorrow, granted them the Aurora's Tear, a prototype vessel forged from the heart of a dying star, capable of folding space without leaving a wake. Its hull shimmered like liquid opal, and its AI, named Kalen, spoke in the voice of 1,000 forgotten poets. Their journey through the Veil of Echoes was unlike anything Corin had experienced. Time bent and stretched. Memories surfaced unbidden. He saw flashes of a city built on light, of humans with silver eyes and wings of plasma, of a great exodus through a ring of fire. Mira clung to his hand, her own mind awash in visions of twin moons orbiting a blue-green world that was not Earth. Lyra, ever the anchor, monitored the ship's integrity as reality itself seemed to fray at the edges. Then they emerged. Before them hung a structure so vast it defied scale. A ring world, ancient beyond reckoning, its surface covered in crystalline forests and oceans of liquid light. At its center pulsed a sphere of pure white energy, humming with the same lullaby that had called them across the stars. As the Aurora's Tear approached, the ring world responded. Towers of living crystal rose from the surface, forming a docking spire that welcomed them like a long-lost child returning home. They stepped onto the surface barefoot, as the ship's sensors warned of no atmosphere. But they breathed easily, as if the air itself recognized their blood. The ground beneath them glowed faintly, responding to Corin's footsteps with ripples of gold. "It knows you," Mira whispered, tears tracing silver paths down her blue cheeks. Deep within the ringworld's core, they found the source. A chamber lined with stasis pods, thousands of them. Most were empty, but in the center one remained active. Inside floated a humanoid figure, tall, serene, with skin the color of dawn and hair like spun starlight. Human, but not. As Corin approached, the pod hissed open. The figure's eyes fluttered open, gold-flecked, just like Mira's. "You are late," the being said in perfect archaic Terran. But not too late. His name was Elian, and he was the last guardian of the cradle, the true birthplace of humankind. Millennia ago, humanity had not evolved on Earth. They were seated there by the cradle's architects, a precursor race who foresaw a coming darkness. The Devourer, a sentient entropy that consumed civilizations by unraveling their emotional coherence. To protect their greatest creation, beings capable of love, sacrifice, and boundless empathy. The architects scattered humanity across the galaxy, wiping their memories and hiding the cradle behind the veil. But the Devourer had awakened. It had taken many forms, warlords, plagues, ideologies, but its latest incarnation was the Scourge. The matriarch hadn't been evil. She'd been infected. And now, sensing the rise of the Triune Bond, a resonance powerful enough to reignite the cradle's defenses, the Devourer was coming for them all. "You are the key," Elian told Corin, placing a hand on his chest. "Not because of your blood, but because you chose love over fear. The bond you share is the first true echo of the original human unity. With it, the cradle can awaken. But awakening the cradle required a sacrifice. Not of life, but of identity. To activate the core, all three of them would have to merge their consciousnesses into the planetary mind, becoming part of the cradle's eternal song. They would exist, but not as individuals. Their memories, their love, their laughter, all would become the foundation of a new shield for the galaxy. A living lullaby to keep the darkness at bay. Lyra was the first to speak. "If we do this, will we remember each other?" Elian nodded. "Not as you are, but your love will be the first note in a symphony that never ends." Mira looked at Corin, her eyes full of both sorrow and joy. We've already chosen each other 1,000 times. What's one more? Corin thought of Earth, of rain on rooftops, of his mother's voice, of the first time he saw the stars and knew he belonged among them. He thought of Lyra's fierce loyalty, Mira's gentle strength, and the way their hands fit together like pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known was missing. This wasn't an ending. It was a transformation. As they stepped into the cradle's heart, a chamber of swirling light and sound, the devourer arrived, not as a fleet, but as a wave of anti-emotion, a void that swallowed color, sound, and hope. The ring world trembled. Stars dimmed in the sky. Holding hands, the three of them closed their eyes and let go. Light erupted, not blinding but embracing. The cradle awoke. Vines of golden energy shot into the void, weaving a net of compassion, memory, and joy. The devourer shrieked, not in rage but in confusion, for it had never encountered something it could not consume. Love, it discovered, was not a weakness. It was a law of the universe as fundamental as gravity. When the light faded, the ring world stood serene. The aurora's tear remained, empty but humming with a new song. And across the galaxy, beings of every species felt a strange warmth in their chests. A sense of being watched over, remembered, loved. Back on Velara, the Empress stood on the balcony where Corin and her daughters had once watched the sun set. She placed a hand on the railing, and it bloomed with moon petals, glowing softly in the twilight. A whisper rode the wind, familiar and tender. We are here. And in the heart of the cradle, three souls danced among the stars, not lost, but woven into the very fabric of existence. Their love now the silent pulse that kept the universe alive. Years later, the legend of the triune bond became a beacon across the stars, not as a tale of loss, but of love that reshaped destiny. The cradle song spread gently through the cosmos, healing old wounds and kindling new hopes. On Velara, the twin princesses were never forgotten. Their names were sung in lullabies and etched into the palace's living walls, which bloomed with golden flowers every anniversary of their choice. Then, one quiet dawn, as the twin suns kissed the horizon, a soft chime echoed through the moon-petal courtyard. A child, blue-skinned with white hair, eyes shimmering with gold and human warmth, stepped barefoot onto the dew-kissed stones. She carried no title, yet guards bowed instinctively. In her hands, she held 3 intertwined rings of starlight. Behind her, 2 figures emerged from the garden mist, Lyra, strong and smiling, her silver scar now a badge of honor, and Mira, humming their old lullaby, her hair threaded with strands of cobalt. And between them walked Corin, human as ever, yet glowing with quiet peace, his hand resting on the child's shoulder. The cradle had not taken them, it had returned them, not as echoes, but as whole souls, reborn through the very love they'd offered the universe. The Empress wept with joy. The people cheered, and as the child laughed, chasing fireflies made of stardust, the palace itself seemed to sigh in relief. They built a new life, not in thrones, but in gardens, in shared meals, in bedtime stories that blended Earth and Velara. Their love remained unbroken, their bond deeper than law or legend.